Funnily enough, I thought I updated the drivers yesterday, so I'm not sure why it made me do that. Alright, where did I put the script? Alright, so we'll be going over the season finale from last season and covering some of the highlights of each team throughout the season, like what some players in particular, with how they did for the last half of the season, particularly after the All-Stars game, and how they did throughout the finals. And we'll present their awards before we move on to the Season 2 overview. It's kind of thrown together, so it's probably not going to be super professional, but also didn't help I did it like, what was it, like 4 a.m., so, but it's done. I think it's okay, so we'll see how that goes. So we will go ahead and start with the Gooners, who are the runner-ups. So, for the Gooners, their team was thrown together in the draft by me through, I think it was like player number 4 afterwards. And then, of course, it made trades throughout the seasons. And it resulted in quite a well-balanced team, frankly. Mostly due to natural chem, but also just due to the players they had in their team. The likes of Goomba, Paragoomba, Koopa, and you had the core of the Blue Magikoopa, Ravenclaw, and Boomerang Bro. So, and once they had some hitters on finally, with the likes of Dry Bones coming on board and King Boo finally popping off, they started scoring amazing points. That can be seen how they did through the later half of the season. Going over player stats, we'll start with Bowser Jr. So, a theme that he kind of had throughout the season was he was very well rounded, but in a soft way, because he wasn't like particularly extraordinary in an area, but he did well almost everywhere. That being said, his best area was definitely fielding with a 66 overall, which is pretty good. I think it's just above par for most people who were dedicated to be in the field. This is mostly due to him swapping with his teammates after pitching, where he was usually seen either at first or second base, which has most of the balls that come there. But it's a good showing of how versatile he can be pretty much everywhere on the field. For second best area, that would be hitting his OPS, so we can go over to that. It's not super impressive, like I said, but it's a good 1.239, which again means he gets on base enough to be very good on his team. He does better. He's not like extraordinarily better than a lot of people on his team when it comes to that, but he is better than the likes of the Magikoopa. I can't see the left, but Magikoopa, Paragoomba, Parakoopa, two that come to mind. But it's usually when he uses Star Bat that he does better. He didn't use it a lot. I'm hoping to see he uses it a little more this season. And he only managed one single home run, but he did get on base 4th most of all his players on his team. His best batter was Dry Bones. Dry Bones was a very late addition. He came in, I think, week 3 or 5. It was somewhere either before or after the All-Stars game. Made the difference, though. He has an extraordinarily good average. He's sitting above the league average with almost 7, which almost puts him in the range of Blue Toad, who is our league leading average. And he has a fairly solid OPS at 1.6, almost breaking into the 2 range, which we only had 2 players who broke into that, which we'll get to that later. Other than that, he filled in a hole for White Chem, which did wonders for this team, with Peter Griffin and King Boo finally hooking up with Koopa, which gave them a good chem line. Their best fielder or pitcher, which I went with a fielder, was Boomerang Bro. No surprise here, he literally won the award. Very close though, very close to someone else who we'll get to in a moment. 165, disregarding that, also great batting, so again, a lot to be proud of here. He was one of the primary showings of how versatile the Bros were, both on the field and on the plate. And really putting them ahead of over the Critters and Magikoopas and showing why they really deserve to all be retained for this season. And finally, for character reviews, we have the surprise character of this team, which is undoubtedly Lilo. Good lord. Despite only playing half the season, I still think that if they had played more, they would have easily gone to me of the season, which they were 1 game off. Look at that pitching. 0.6. And not a bad bat. Not great at getting on base, but good at having good hits when they do. I think they had like 3 home runs? 2 home runs. which is, again, solid for 5 games for a me. And not bad fielding at all, which they were seamlessly seen, I think, at third base, which doesn't get a lot of plays, so good on them for that. It was just showcasing of how Mies can make the difference, and might have played a part into why this GM decided to go with the team they did, which we'll get into later on. Their best game was... it was a little close. I decided to go with Week 7, which was their close rematch against the Spitballs, who they played against during the season openers, a 13-10 win. This is the most amount of home runs they've had in the game before the playoffs, which was 3. Tied with the Spitballs for that game, who were on the streak of actually coming back. I think this was the nail in the coffin that put a stop to that, which the Spitballs would go on to lose 0-10 the following week. And it showed off that Kimbu can hit, but that he's not a home run hitter, that he's more of a base hitter. I think we're going to see a little more of that from him this coming season. Finally, for the end of the season / finale, they won out against all their conference opponents, which put them in the first seed. So they didn't have a play-in whatsoever, but unfortunately they lost both of their remaining out-of-conference games against the Flowers and the Wilds, respectively. During the playoffs, they absolutely murdered their opponent during their second game, but their first game was a little bit of a snoozer. I think it was a 2-point game. But unfortunately, overall, they ended up getting swept by the Wilds in a 3-game total loss. It ended up being a very small ball heavy game, and their last game was very close due to the curse of the blooper, but it was still a very valiant drive to make it that far for a team that was ragtag as they were. And to present their award, there we are. And I made sure they're different, so they're not like the season awards. So again, congratulations. Good job for doing well, and we'll see how well you do this season with your new team. Now, for the winners of this season, the Wilds. Let me pull up my script again. Wilds, oh boy. We're gonna get into a lot of how this team came to be. A lot of factors. They had a great start, of course. They had probably one of the best draft going out of the draft teams, because they had almost all the monkeys. They were only lacking one. No, they were lacking technically, well, one because they just traded Dixie later on, but only really missing Baby DK, who they got later. But the first 2 games, you would have not think that they would have ended up like this. But there's one particular game which showed off exactly how this team was going to be the rest of the remaining part of the season. But we'll get to that. Starting off, showing off their captain, Donkey Kong, of course. Their best hit area was hitting, 100%. Average, which is about league average, which is good. They were more home run hitting, and then they had a couple bad weeks where they just weren't getting on base, but they made up for it in the finals, so it's completely fine. Injuries will do that to you. 2, he was the only one of 2 players to break the barrier of the 2 range, so extremely good hitting. His other best area was pitching, which is a 3.14 pi. So again, amazing pitching. That's way more above the league average on that. 101 hits allowed, which is fine because there was a couple of games where they got a little high hitting against them, where the people would just get on base, but not a lot of runs scored against them, which is good. Which is why you see how strong that defense was. Again, one of the best fastballs in the game when he decides to throw it like that, and probably the best whiffing causing start pitch in the game. Because if they hit it and they don't charge hit it, it's an immediate out at first almost every time, unless an item comes out, but that rarely happens. Now for their overall best batter, no surprise here, PD Piranha. Deservingly winner of season MVP, deservingly winner of best batting OPS of the league, and almost best fielder of the league, which is his second best stat. 0.5 off. 2.33. Absolutely brilliant hitting. I think, honestly, had he performed a little more at the beginning of the season, there's a real world where he could have gone above 2.5. And honestly, I'd love to see him do it this season. I don't really think there's much else to be said. Really, he had an amazing average too, 0.60, which is again way above league average. You kind of want to be the 6 or higher range generally. 5 range is okay. Anything under 5, you're hitting Noki territory and nobody wants to be there. But again, amazing job by PD. Well deserved for being the player he was, and well deserved for being retimed. And speaking of best fielder, which again I've decided to pick fielding since we already touched pitching, PD Piranha. Good lord, he made numbers at first base. 164.5. Pairing with DK and Funky Kong when they were at their positions helped them immensely for getting outs. Proved how well a good first baseman, man, especially when later on the season when he started to dive for balls, because he actually has an ability that's for diving like critters, which I'd had no idea. And so that helps him get balls even when they're out of his reach, on top of his height, which helps him grab balls that are above his head. So he's just, honestly, I would say he's probably one of the better infield men despite his size. So like something to think about really on that. Now, surprise character. I think the GM of the Wilds will probably agree with me on this. It's gonna be Dixie Kong. Wow. Entire beginning of the season, up until Dixie was finally played, Dixie was absolutely trashed on because normally playing this on your own and growing up, Dixie is trash. But what we've learned is Dixie with an item and the right team is deadly. She gets on base and she can get people home. Not super often, but this is a home run team, so there's not a lot of opportunities where she can. She's mostly got brought home, which can be seen because she was brought home at least for the equivalent of the amount of games she played, which is good. Not too shabby fielding. She's outfield, so it's going to be low. That'll be rectified this season. A 1 OPS, which again is fairly good. 0.5, which is exactly average. Not bad for 0.4. No pitching to speak of because you don't want to see her on the mound. Wild's usually stuck with these two. Honestly, I don't think she's hated no more. And I think the Nokis have really taken that place because the Nokis are dog shit. But I think this is proof that we can see players like the Nokis pop off eventually. And I think that we might see one pop off. I genuinely think we will. Now, for their best game of the season, this is the one I was alluding to. Week 2, Monarchs, absolutely. 27-3. I'm just gonna take a look at these first few games. First game, 1 point differential. This was 7 innings against me. Second week, 3-point game against the Fireballs where they lost. It's like, you think they're gonna be a close hitting team, and then this game happens. And you notice there's really no other game like it besides this other game that he played that week, and the Fireballs he got the Spitballs, but the Spitballs were in a rough state that week. Monarchs were a good team. They had got lost by 24. So it set the precedent for this team of what we were going to see the rest of the season. You can see that for every other week because they, from this point forward, always scored above 10 points. It's an amazing streak, and they hadn't lost since week 1. It's absolutely amazing. And you can see what a good lineup and a good team set really does for a hitting team like this. Because it makes pitching irrelevant. Because if you don't have to swap people in, you have a good enough defense, you have a good enough offense, it's not going to matter. Finally, highlighting the end of the season finale, they stomped out pretty much all their remaining opponents. Well, not pretty much, they did. Their only close game was against the Monarchs, who rose to the challenge. I believe it was week 7. No, week 8. No, week 6. Sorry, my bad. I'm forgetting which is which. 3-point game though, which again we're just touching on this because this was the other one in consideration for highlight because this was the closer game they had, but however I think it meant more. This is a 27-3 game, but still you can still see they won by 10. They got above 10 points in that game, and from there they went on to the semifinals. First had a close game against the Flowers, and then immediately, second game, they snuffed out what remaining flame the Flowers had in them for the finals. Went to the finals and destroyed the Gooners with only one close game at the very end. And they showed that team can also slap hit, which we had never seen before. The few times they had tried to slap hit beforehand brought their score down. And then those few games, they proved that they can do consistently if they have the right opportunity. So really good games to watch, honestly, I would say on that. But Although no GM is probably surprised about the result of the finals, I think I can wholeheartedly speak on their behalf and say that they absolutely deserve to win. So well done to the Wilds. And with that, spine. There you are, mate. It's a little hard to see with the lighting, but... And now, on to next season business. That's where the majority of the script is gone. Alright, I think I need to start with overall checker. Alright, we're going to start from the left and we're going to the right. I won't reveal the team names until we hit the power ranking section. So starting off with the former Wilds team, who is now fielding a team headed by Peach, which is, well, it's headed by Peach in game, however, in the heart, and the actual team captain is PD Piranha. Yes, of course he should be a captain, but I don't know enough about coding to do that, unfortunately. If I did, I absolutely would. I'd put King K. Rool up there too. Oh, probably over Diddy Kong, because fuck Diddy Kong. So, real quick, I need to mark that just for remembering that. So, I'm covering 3 bases when I look over teams for just seeing how their draft really went. I'm looking at their composition focus from what just appeared over an overview, and I'm going to be trying to predict one thing for the team. Composition focus for the new Wilds, which is, we'll get to their name later. Primarily pitching, because you have the likes of Peach, Yoshi, King Boo, and Blooper, which I would argue is a good pitcher, which maybe you would argue against that, which you could start Blooper on the mound and have pretty much any of these people come in. So you have 4 dedicated pitchers. You don't have to worry about your outfield if you have a good dedicated outfield. And I would even argue PD Piranha can pitch. So honestly, even 5. I'd say it's like 4, 3. You'd say maybe 3.5, 4, somewhere in that range. Depends how you ask. With their primary hitters being base hitters, your only power hitters are PD, and it's really only PD, really, because the Piantas has been proven to be more base hitters rather than power hitters. King Boo is definitely more of a base hitter, and obviously Wiggler, Peach, Yoshi, very much base hitters. I think and Bloat, of course, goated average, and then Toad if he decides to get his head out of his ass. Better than Red Toad, good lord. My prediction. The obvious prediction, which is the only one that's split because the former Wilds I have a little more context to go off of in this, is that they'll be the first team to make a trade because they have offered, I think, 3 people trades right now. But going off of that, with the less obvious prediction, I actually think we're going to see one of the Nokis do slightly well. And what I mean by that is that I think they're going to be over last season's averages, at least one stat area. And I think they're going to see at least 1 Noki home run. So we'll see how it comes to that one. Now for the former Fireballs, which actually I'm going to reveal this name because you're using a default name, not a custom name on this one. They're going with the Sunshine, so Mario's team name from Mario Superstar Baseball. Composition focus, very much color chemistry. You see very much red and yellow, only exception this would be Blue Bones. Otherwise, very polarized on that, which I think will work out in the end for them. And very mixed hitting. You have a couple slap hitters, you have a couple power hitters. It's very well rounded across the board. I'm very interested to see how this team does. You'll see where they are in the power rankings. I think they were one of the harder teams to rank, in my opinion. I think bottom 5 were probably very, very toss-up, except for bottom 2 or bottom 1. We almost all agreed on that one, which again, we'll get into it. Prediction, I think they will make the most amount of trades because I think they're going to find that they want natural chemistry. I don't know when that point would be, but I just have a feeling that they're going to want color chemistry more so than the chemistry they currently have. Now for the former Gooners, runner-up. Their team composition focus is, well, obviously color chemistry. They decided to go almost all Miis, which is a decision. So we have no idea how this team's going to do because Miis are really unproven. Outfield, they do okay. Hitting, they do okay. I think it just depends on the Mii. Most of these Miis are unplayed. I think the only played Miis are Jesse with 1 game as an Orange Mii last season. Billy Mays, I believe, 4 games. Hillary Clinton with, I think, 7 or 8 games. that's it. Yeah, so will be interesting. A lot of unproven talent here. Otherwise, consistent hitting because you have like a power hitter. I would not say Berto's a power hitter because she doesn't hit far enough that often. I think she's ended the season with about 3 home runs. Boomerang is a power hitter, but beyond that, the rest of these are just slap hitting or unproven hitting. So I just have to put as consistent hitting. I believe this team, for my prediction, will end up only focusing on one of their chem colors and will start making trades to support that particular color by week 2. So we'll see how that pans out. I could be incredibly wrong. I have no idea how dedicated they are to the Mii cause, but it depends on how it works out. If like the first 2 weeks doesn't work out great, then I think they do that. If they work out well, I think this prediction is easily wrong. Moving on to the former Spitballs, who are now led by DK, which you can see a common denominator here from last season. Obviously natural chem. They have some color chem to back it up quite well. They can actually go almost full chem line with this top 11 alone. You just have to mix it up a little bit. Other than that, they're mixed all around. They have pretty much at least 2 of everything or more. Their only area they're really lacking in is a 3rd power hitter, which I think they can probably grab through trading. I just don't know if they want to. They have good set of pitching. They have good sets of fielding options. Pretty well rounded, so I'm very interested to see how this team pans out, because it's like it's like if you took the Monarchs and combined it with the Wilds from last season, is the way I would probably put it. I believe the prediction for this team is I believe this team will only trade 1 time or less, because I just don't see them trading much, especially if it works out. If it doesn't work out, it's always up in the air, but we'll see. I think it's possible they might really want to hit another hitter. Moving on to my team, also very similar, just a slightly mixed up. It's definitely a mixed hitting team. You have 3 power hitters, you have a good mix of slap hitters or kind of mix hitting, and then, you know, the babies who exist. And I think the other end is definitely pitching, because that was a concern I had from last season, because my 3rd pitcher would come in and basically I get fucked pretty much every time. So I try to make up for it, and I've solved that issue, so shouldn't be a problem. I believe this team, which is just kind of more of a statement more than a prediction, I believe this team will trade the most out of all the teams in the league this season. I won't specify why. Now, moving on to newcomer, replacing the Monsters, who is now still being led by Bowser, but has a new team name, which we'll get into. Their composition focus is definitely natural chemistry. Their only color chem has to come at the end, which is probably going to be light blue or based off the Yoshi, so it depends what they decide to go with. Sorry, my mouth's getting dry. Other than that, definitely fielding focused, because you have the 2 power hitters. You have a lot of slap hitting here. You don't have a lot of pitching options, unfortunately. So they're probably going to end up being trading for at least 1 pitcher or hitter, depending on what it depends on how well Bowser pops off and Dark Bones pops off, which they did quite well at the end of the season, so they might not end up needing it. My prediction for this team, I think this is going to have the least amount of runs scored against them, because I think their defense is going to be really good. So we'll see what happens. Moving on to the former Monarchs, very colorful layout. This is based on their team colors, so you'll probably get an idea for where people went later on. Their team composition focus is definitely mixed chemistry, because they have color chemistry options, they have natural chem options, just a lot of options, period, which is why they're very highly rated right now in the power rankings. We'll show where that is in a moment. And definitely mixed hitting, because again, power hitter, power hitter, power hitter, slap hitter, slap hitter, slap hitter, sometimes power hitter. Really depends on the day. Now, John Cena actually really is the power hitter when he decides to charge up his bat. So you have, again, very mixed team, very well mixed team. I believe this team, my prediction, is going to be the most consistent across with average stats or better across the board when it comes to like the total stats. I think this is going to be like the new, like a more powerful Gooners, if I had to state it, because they are fielding the same captain. Finally, the former Bows. Their composition is definitely pitching focused. They have Wario, Waluigi, Boo, Ravenclaw, and I would argue the Monty also can act as a pitcher. He's just not amazing at it. And then definitely power hitters with Wario, Dry Bones, Blue Critter, and I would say Peter Griffin as well. So not very much slap hitting doing here. And also Boo sometimes has some really good shots, but not very often. There's an obvious problem here with Chem. They're gonna have to rectify that. But that being said, which is weird because Waluigi's in this team again, my prediction, this is gonna be the season dark horse. So we'll see what happens with this team. Now for the power rankings. So I ordered the record in power rankings that we have. This is voted on by 3 people, which is my Global Management Council, which is myself, the GM of the Powerhouses, and the GM of the Posse. There's only one deliberation that we had to, or sorry, 2 deliberations we had to go on. I think we ended up agreeing, so I kept it as me and one of the GMs voted on. So we'll go ahead and just break down why. If my script will come back, that is. There we go. So the Shrew Monkeys, former Spitballs. We saw how well the Monkeys did last season. Good mix of fielding, good mix of pitching and hitting potential across the board with all the players on that team. Almost all of the players are proven to be good, and there's a shit ton of chemistry options. So we currently have them ranked first. I think they will probably stick up in the top 4. It just depends on if hitting becomes a problem or if pitching becomes a problem. Well, not really pitching, mostly just hitting. So mostly on that one. So next is the Freaks, led by the former Monarchs GM. Very well balanced lineup. Good hitters, lots of chem options, great fielding options, but they unfortunately lack a 3rd pitching option, which prevented them from taking the first spot in the power rankings like they did last season. Funniest thing about this is that both of these 2 players on top right now did not qualify for the finals. Yet here they are with some of the most highly rated teams in the league. So good on them for drafting well. It's kind of our fault for letting this happen, to be fair. So hopefully that doesn't bite us in the ass. Next up is my team, the Emerald Phoenixes. Solid core of hitting and pitching options. Unfortunately, it's a weak lineup of good sets of chemistry, and the chemistry options are weak for the outfield. So it's probably going to be ended up having to have to trade to get the good core of the outfield. I think you're going to see probably Trie by week 1, if I had to guess. So again, more of a statement than prediction. Next up is the former captain of the Wilds, who's currently the Posse. Once again, kind of reiterating what I just said for my team, because we're in a very similar state. He has better hitting options than I do. Solid mixed core of hitting and pitching. Lacks good chemistry to line up, and weak chemistry options. He only ranks slightly lower due to having a larger set of chemistry problems to have to work with, mostly due to the Loomies all belonging to one team. I do anticipate that hitting will make this a non-relevant issue. Otherwise, because I did think about it, he was originally more down here before I submitted my rankings. However, I think the hitting is going to be good enough where it's going to keep him. I think he stays top 6, top 5, if I had to guess. Next up is the form of Fireballs, now the Sunshines. Solid core of hitters, great options with Chem to work with, but they have very limited pitching options. And their fielding options are very limited, so they're gonna have to play around that, and having both of those at once is very problematic because if your pitching gets fucked up and your outfield's already weak, the chance, you have 3 people who might come in to become the new pitcher and fuck up the outfield unless they happen to have Chem with the current pitcher. So I don't know how they're gonna rectify that. I don't know how they're gonna lay that out. I'm looking forward to see how they play around that. I think they probably end up making a trade to rectify that, so. Next up is the former Bows, currently the Phantom Powerhouses. Great hitting, great pitching core, but major problems with the outfields and chemistry options, which is going to cost some points if they do not fix that. So probably you see them, if they get a lot of points scored on them, trade probably within week 3 or so earlier, but I guess. Then the newcomer leading the Bitty Bitty Bowsers. Unfortunately, they are ranked here because they lack a good 3rd option for both pitching and hitting, and their outfield options are not amazing. However, their chemistry options are amazing to work with, and so I feel like they can play around it. That being said, the outfield that they do have, because they have one solid option for outfield, has been proven to do very well against hitting teams. Hence why my previous predictions that they're not going to have a lot of runs scored against them. So I think that the infield and outfield core is going to make the difference. And finally, no surprise here, is the Berto Burger Flips, led by the former captain of the Gooners. They're fielding mostly a me team, which, like said before, unproven. No one knows what's going to happen. Very much chaos. No good second or third pitcher to work with. No dedicated third hitter. And outfield and infield are going to be easily compromised the second that the wrong person decides to come in after the captain pitches. So, playing a little bit of fire there. Whether it works out or not, we'll see. The defense matters enough. It's not going to make any difference for them because they're not going to have to worry about the outfield getting compromised. All right, and finally, we'll end off with looking over the Season 1 openers. So, starting off the week right now, because these probably will end up being moved around. I don't have these in the proper order because a game got scheduled today. But the first game has not changed. It will be the Burger Flips at the Phoenixes. These are the rival games of the week. This game, it all depends on field choice, the field choice here, and what team I end up playing. I have been asked to play one of my hitting lineups. I don't know if I'm going to right now, as of the moment. If I do, small stadium obviously makes this a very one-sided game, most likely, depending on how well the outfield does. My gut says it's going to be one-sided toward my team, but I'm really looking forward to see what the Mies can pull off. This is definitely one of the less heated rivalries. It's more of just bantery, kind of friendly rivalry, experimental type game. With both of our teams, just really wanted to see what they can do with what lineups we field. So it's a good start to the season because you see people trying to see what works. Next up, then, we have the Freaks hosting the Posse. This is without a doubt the most heated rivalry in the league. Obviously, Monarchs Wilds from last season, 27-3 game, and then you had the 10-7 game where it was a shootout between the two, and so there is a lot of heat between them. Very passionate about what they do in this league, so it's gonna be a very entertaining game. This season they field two very completely different teams, the Posse having their opponent's former captain at that, which I think is hilarious. I think this has the biggest potential for an upset based on power rankings, where you could see the Posse definitely beating the Freaks here. Of course, I don't think the Freaks want that to happen for obvious reasons. But especially with the Posse having the Season 1 GOAT on their team, points are going to be scored. I think regardless, it's going to be very, very a close game, regardless of the stadium chosen. I don't think the stadium's going to matter, frankly. It's going to come down to how the players perform and what lineup they decide to go with. I'd love to see the Freaks win and get some revenge for last season, because they unfortunately got snubbed in the schedule and had to be away at the Wilds twice for both of their games, and so they get to host the first one. The Week 8 game, they will be away. My gut says, though, which I'm sorry to the Freaks, I think Posse takes it by 1. I definitely think this is it's the game of the week for a reason. That's why it's bolded. It is the game to watch. The last time these GMs faced off, it was a stressful masterclass of Super Sluggers baseball, and it really showed what this league can bring for people. I'm expecting absolutely nothing different here. So definitely looking forward to this. I very much look forward to commentating. Then we have the Bitty Bitty Bowsers hosting the Sunshines. Kind of a more artificial rivalry, just because we had to honestly get someone else into the league. But both these people are within the same residency, we'll say. Both teams have great chem options, but also have pitching problems past the first 2 dedicated pitchers. So I think it's going to be high scoring because I think both outfields get compromised, regardless of the stadium. That being said, I think the Sunshines will pull off the win. Given the nature of these GMs, though, despite this rivalry being very artificial, I absolutely think that this rivalry is going to become heated later in the season. I'm not going to specify why, especially if this game ends up being close. This is going to be a really fun set of teams to watch battle it out for the rest of the season. And finally, we have the currently scheduled game between the Shroom Monkeys and the Powerhouses. This is based on the power rankings, this is a lot more lopsided because obviously the Powerhouses are a little more in limbo while the Shroom Monkeys have a solid core ready to go. But that being said, this is definitely one of the more spicy rivalries because these two, obviously, they love each other. So it's going to be a little more passionate, a little less heated in different ways, but obviously not in a weird way. I'm just going to specify that. It's bad wording there. This game absolutely comes down to the stadium chosen, I think. Definitely due to the hitters, because both these teams have good hittings. The Powerhouses definitely had the better set of hitting, and so I don't know if the Shroom Monkeys are going to decide to go with the small stadium because it doesn't really benefit them as much as it actually does the Powerhouses. With that, I do think chemistry will cause the Powerhouses to lose this game, giving the win to the Monkeys. And with that, that would be all. So, look forward to week 1, where you'll see at the beginning of the week, tomorrow at that, you will have the Emerald Phoenixes hosting the Burger Flips. That's what I'm just gonna say. Can't really see it, but go Phoenixes.